I've been quieter than usual, and I realize it's not for the reasons people might think. It's not because I don't have anything to say, clearly, because I'm making videos. It's not because I'm unsure, and it's not because I've stepped back from what I'm building. Something else has changed. And if you want to hear more about that, continue watching the video. So there is some misinterpretation happening. I think a lot of times when people become quieter, it gets interpreted as disengagement, confusion, or even lack of direction. But that hasn't been my experience. And if you've been following this series and, doing some of your own internal work and external work, then I'm pretty sure you can relate as well. And so here's the core truth about this kind of quiet season that I found myself in. This time, I did not lose my voice. I just stopped using it prematurely, and that is different, and that's a moment for me. So there was a personal shift, and what I started to notice about myself is that I was processing too much out loud, thinking in real time with people, explaining things before they were fully formed, and then having to revisit, clarify, or even decisions I hadn't even fully made just yet. So the confrontation, if I'm honest, it wasn't about communication, but it was uncertainty looking for confirmation. And that was a big wake up call for me. And let's be honest, some of us talk too early, and then we have to defend the decisions we didn't even commit to yet. It's like, I was just thinking, or I just want to process this with you. I didn't say that this was the final thing. So I didn't like the way I was feeling. I didn't like the way things were moving. So I just, realize and take ownership and accountability, like, girl, just stop talking too much. Just be quiet. Right. And for someone who talks for a living, even before I started making videos, that was something quite challenging for me to do. So I had to come up with selective engagement. I started shifting how I engaged, not withdrawing, because there was a season where I did withdraw. And I'm sharing this with you because they can look similar at first, but one has deeper consequences than the other. And so again, not withdrawing, but becoming more selective. And that looks like selective with conversations, selective with opinions, and selective where I place my energy. I don't remember who said this, but maybe multiple people have said this. This isn't my own, is what I'm getting at. Is that, I only have a limited time on earth, and God has given me, a limited amount of words. And so I just need to be a good steward over the words I tend to put out in the world. Like, just be a good steward over my number of my word count, as you can say, because I don't know when it's going to be up, and I don't want to waste my word count on unnecessary engagements, right? And this is where I also had to realize that not every thought needs an audience. Now, if you're like me, I process a lot with myself, so this isn't like I'm just running to everybody. There's a time where I do process a lot. I get to a certain point, and then I want to just have a sounding board and share with that person or people or group of people, just like a sounding board. But then when you get to a certain season in your life, you don't even need that sounding board. Sometimes you do, but there are a lot of times when you don't. And I realized that not every stage of my process needs input. And that's why I wanted to put those two together, because there are times when you do receive that feedback from people, but there are times where, no, you just go ahead and make that decision. You've processed it. You've looked at all the pros and cons in the entire situation. Boom, decision made. Didn't need an audience for that. Everyone didn't need to be in your processing. And as a leader of yourself, I think that's important. And just, as a side note, a leader outside of whether it's your family, your business, or even your community or your company, like where you work for, that's what leadership is about. Everyone doesn't need to have input, at every single stage. But okay, that was my little side note. So I have to look at energy and clarity. And I realized how much energy gets lost in conversations that don't move anything forward. Now, we like to talk about how that's draining in our professional spaces, but that's also the case in our personal spaces. And then how much energy gets drained and trying to explain something that isn't even clear to you yet. Like, sometimes when I just want a sounding board, I just want you to just hear my thinking, and then they come at you with all the questions and scenarios, and you're like, whoa, hold on. I didn't ask for all of this, but you invited them into the conversation. So that's where you have to take a step back. And for me, that is where I realized that in this season, it requires more clarity than expression. And let's not confuse this with having clarity so much where you don't move forward, because clarity can be an idol in a sense, because you're always searching forward. But a lot of us, we know when we get clear enough to make a decision, but we don't need to be clear to where we have to express it to everyone else. Let me know if you're understanding, that the little subtle distinction. What I'm trying to be clear and use and be more strategic with my personal word count. So in the season, I had to realize that my silence wasn't confusion, but it was calibration. And oftentimes it is about recalibration, because you know where you're supposed to be, but you get knocked off a little bit, and sometimes you need to be recalibrated. Now, what did I do? And how am I doing that? Because I always want to give you something practical. A part of that shift has been changing how I process, and I have been using AI to do that. And I don't feel the need to bring everything to friends, family, or even my partner in its early stages. And not because they don't matter, but because not everything needs to be worked out in a conversation. And AI, I think, is a great tool. It's not your diary. And I heard someone say that it's not the Holy Spirit, stop going to that. But I'm going to just push back on that a little bit, because, God made everything, right? You're using a tool. It is not a substitute. I will say that. But there are things where you're in a safe space and you can get some things out, and the technology can help you sort through those things. That's what I use AI for. Like, let me go ahead and brain dump. Let me go ahead and get this out, and then, help unscramble what's going on in my head so I can see things more clearly. And that has been more beneficial to me. But if you want to know more about that process, let me know down below. And again, it saves time. And I put this into action. Like, I was thinking about something, put it through AI, let me do all my word vomit and everything out. That's where I save my actual word count, type it all up, let it spit back to me a clear and concise way. Then I took it to someone and just boom, boom, boom. And I saw that the conversation or the engagement was like worlds apart. And so that's why I've been selective with my engagement and using the technology that God has given us to help that process. Now, to get back onto this, and I want you to hear me clearly, because you will get some pushback of people saying, well, why aren't you hanging out with us like you used to, or why aren't you talking, or what's wrong with you? And you have to understand that some of us aren't talking less because we have nothing to say, but we're talking less because we're thinking more, and we're choosing where our thinking goes. And that's powerful, because this is not just about you being in your feelings or just, I need my space, my alone time, but it's really allowing your brain to work. Like, we are workers, we are thinking. And this is not overthinking either. I want to be clear about that. You're not just ruminating over something and causing worry and anxiety. No, you're really being strategic and working through the scenarios and thinking about possibilities and being strategic, and what is this going to look like, and how I move forward, or did I look up at all the possibilities? And this is why I say that AI can help do all those things if you know the right things to ask it. And so your alone time or your quiet time is allowing you to formulate those questions and hone in your internal prompting so that you can use the technology and then be more strategic about your thinking so that you can have more space to think. Again, if you want me to do a deeper dive on explaining that, or just ask me a question down below, I'll be sure to answer that. This is not overthinking, okay? And this is not just being withdrawn because you don't have anything to say. You have a lot to say, but you're going to be strategic about it moving forward. And so in this time, I also had to be honest about where I've been. So there was a season of shame, guilt, and embarrassment, and not just because of what I was going through, but because of what I thought it meant about me. And that's something I said in the previous video. Isn't a lot of times what we go through, it has nothing to do with the actual situation, but it's like, what are people going to think about me, or what am I going to think about myself? And we can say it all day long, I don't care what anybody thinks about me. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. I think it's a perception of what people may think about you. And when I say people, it's the close people, the people that you interact with. And it's not always like, are they going to down me or anything like that? It's like, you just don't want unnecessary conversations. Or sometimes they hold up a mirror to you and you're not ready to confront that. So we have to also be strategic in our language to ourselves and what we think about situations. Again, when I said, I don't care what people think about me, you don't care about what non-important people think about you. All right. So again, let me know if that makes sense to you, because that one just came to me. That's what it is. No, you don't care about what people think. A random, who cares? But important people, or people you perceive as important, they say something to you, you do care about what they say. But when you go through this process and get more strategic and laser focused about your thinking, and then clarify your decisions before you speak, then even what they say about you won't matter, and you'll be able to move forward. And so what I'm starting to feel now is that the weight is lifting. Because remember, I talked about shame, embarrassment, guilt, and all that. Not because everything is being solved at the time of this video. Not everything is being solved, but I do feel a sense that I'm no longer fighting in the same way. I'm no longer resisting in the same way. And that there is quite the win. And what I'm realizing is that I'm not performing progress anymore. I'm actually building it. And that's a part is very different, subtle, is you're doing things and it looks like you are making progress, you're accomplishing things, but you're not. You're just performing it. You're just doing the theatrics. You're doing the things that don't matter. But then when you get intentional about doing the real things that cause you, your nervous system to shake a little bit, that's how you know that you're building something worthwhile. That can be in business, your family, your relationship, that can be in anything. And there's a, like I said, there's a difference between performing progress and actually building progress. So doing those things has allowed my confidence to return, and it looks different. It looks like doing the work without needing recognition. And that's the big one, especially for those of us who are high achievers. It looks like creating without needing immediate validation. For me, that's like these videos, right? I can put them up and nobody's watching, but you know what? I still feel good because I am building something, and eventually they will get watched. And it also looks like moving forward without announcing every step. Again, real G's move in silence like the G in Paradigm, or if you are a Lil Wayne fan, real G's move in silence like the G in Lasagna, right? You don't have to broadcast everything, every thought, every step. I've realized personally that constantly expressing where you are can actually slow you down from where you are going, because silence isn't always avoidance. Sometimes it is preparation, and it is okay to be silent. It is okay to be silent. Sit with that, honor that, and tune into that, because you are being prepared for your next level. So as I close, I am not being quiet because I have nothing to say. I am being quiet, and I have been quiet because I'm making sure what I say next actually matters. And I want the words that come out of your mouth to actually matter to the people that you are supposed to impact and influence during your time here on this planet. So if something I said made you think a little deeper, or say, never quite thought about it like that, then take a moment and sit with it, and don't rush past it. Don't get defensive, and don't immediately become offensive and you just go run out and do some things. And if you're building or rebuilding in this season, be sure to build it with structure. If you still have time, and if you made it to the end of the video, be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and hype if you have that feature, because it really will help me out. And I will see you in the next one. That's all for now. Bye.